Yes.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right?
Oh!
The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Andy, he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs. Hey, welcome in. It's the Arrowhead Addict Chiefs pregame show. My name is Patrick Allen, here with you, as always, each week to get you ready for the final Chiefs preseason game of 2023. I got to tell you guys, I'm relieved, man. I just want them to get through this game without anybody getting hurt. Few injuries bopping around for the Chiefs, but nothing too bad. They're generally in good shape. So let's keep it that way, right? No, we don't want anybody else getting hurt, anything like that. I've been trying to find if Andy Reid has said what he expects for the Chiefs-Browns game. As I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, last year the Chiefs played into the third quarter. But I remember I watched Andy Reid's press conference earlier this week, and he said that the starters would get a little bit of time in the preseason game. So I'm wondering if he's going to back off on that. Actually, Mary Kay Cabot from I believe Cleveland.com, or maybe she's at the Plain Dealer. Maybe those two are the same thing. I don't know. She said Andy Reid and the Browns, Kevin Stefanski will likely coordinate a little bit how much they play their starters on Saturday. So I don't know if he said anything today recently, but that might be it. So I think in the past, Andy likes to have the team go through that sort of halftime, coming back out, like dress rehearsal stage. That may not be the case here, based on what he said during the week, depending on how much Stefanski wants to see his starters, if those guys are going to coordinate. Because really, that's what this is about, right? It's about these two teams seeing what they want out of their starters and then getting a look at the guys that they want to get a look at. So if the two head coaches can coordinate a little bit on how long they're going to have the starters out there, that's helpful, because you want to see your ones go up against their ones and maybe their twos versus your twos, right? Shout out to everybody watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button. This is going to be an interactive pregame show. We're going to take your questions, hear what you want to know about the Chiefs game coming up here in just a few minutes. And boy, we are getting spammed to hell from some of those. You guys, if you don't see a lot of the spam in the chat, our guy Richard's all over that, man. Producer Richard, always can count on him to make sure that the bots don't take over. Let's start formulating your questions, okay? What questions you have about the game? Let me know what you're looking forward to. Which players are you going to be watching closely in this pivotal last preseason game for the Chiefs? And then, of course, we'll be back at halftime with the halftime show and a post-game show. Before we get to the questions, fire them up because there's a delay. Just got a couple reviews to get to from this week. From our guy, Clint McKenzie, my Chiefs lifeline. Life gets complicated sometimes. As a caregiver for my best friend of 43 years, I focused the first half of this year on helping Wendy through the end of her life's journey. I lost track of everything, Chiefs, for months. I stopped reviewing this, my Essential Chiefs podcast. I knew I missed it, but I didn't realize how much it means to me until recently. If you'll give it a listen, you'll understand. I wanted to read that one from Clint, because Clint's been a longtime supporter of this podcast, going all the way back to when we started and nobody else was listening at that time. And Clint was the first one kind of through the breach, giving us reviews over on Apple and helping us get a foothold and find more Chiefs fans. He means a lot to us, to me, this podcast. And he had a very dear friend who was sick and stepped up. And I just think that's awesome. And I wanted to take a minute, aside from the football talk, which is what we're here to talk about, and just we've got a lot of great people who listen to this podcast and who are invested in this and who are a part of the Chiefs kingdom. And it's Clint's an inspiration, stepping up and helping his friend during a very difficult time. We appreciate you, Clint. Thank you for your support of the podcast. Obviously, your support of the Chiefs, and hope this, as you're healing. I know in situations like that, we're never fully healed, but as you're healing out there, I hope that the podcast brings you some comfort, some entertainment, some joy, and the Chiefs do the same for you this year. All right, let's get to some of the questions on the football game. Elijah says, do you think Rashee Rice has a bigger impact on the offense than rookie wide receivers typically do under Andy Reid? Elijah, that's a tough one, but yes, I do. We'll see maybe a little bit more of Rice today. I wouldn't be surprised if they got into the season and he was rotating in and had games, 40 receiving yards, 50 receiving yards. I think that's probably likely. But I do think they like him quite a bit. And there's a reason they drafted him. Obviously, there's a reason they drafted Sky Moore as well. But Rice just seems to have developed a little bit of a relationship with Patrick Mahomes going back to even before the draft when he worked out with him. Trust with the quarterback is everything. And I think that, yes, maybe Andy Reid doesn't like to play rookies a ton, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. It's a complex offense. You need to know where you're going to be. But we saw this with McCole Hardman, right? You just really weren't ever sure what the trust level was between Patrick Mahomes and McCole Hardman. Year after year, they just didn't seem to be on the same page. And that's ultimately one of the reasons why McCole Hardman's a New York Jet right now and not on a second contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. If Patrick Mahomes trusts a receiver, they've got a better chance to make the team than maybe the highlights that you're seeing in camp and those types of things. So it seems like Rashee Rice has the trust of Mahomes. Last week, first pass of the game, Mahomes goes to Rice, hits him in the hands, Rice drops it. It happens. He's young. But if that trust level continues to build, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more and more of Rice throughout the course of the season. I'm really excited to see how he performs. And Sky Moore as well. Sky Moore, not the kind of rookie season you were hoping for, but this is a big year for him as well. I think he's going to be getting opportunities. Do both of those guys work out in the long term for the Chiefs? I mean, I think they'll both be around. They're very high picks, but I would say maybe only one of them kind of emerges as a sort of go-to target. And right now, I would say, based on what I've seen, Rice could be the leader in the clubhouse, but Sky Moore's supposed to have had a really great camp as well. So fire in more questions. Raymond Chandler says, is today the day we get more info on top wide receivers, or are they going to carry 7 and figure it out during the season? They've not carried more than 5 since you can only feed so many. Yeah, it comes down to special teams. And it's not, I think it's easy for us. And I think Andy alluded to this during his presser this week as well. It's not just about what we zero in on, right? We're all zeroed in on, oh, hey, man, the wide receiver position. Who's going to make it out of the wide receivers and how many are they going to keep? But they're constructing a roster here. So Andy and Brett Veach have to look at the entire roster and determine where their needs are and what they're keeping at other positions. They don't have a fullback anymore. Does that open up more chances for them to keep more wide receivers than they might typically if they like the guys that they have? What's going on along the offensive line? How do they feel about their depth there? What about the running back position? Are they going to keep 4 running backs? Are they going to keep Deneric Prince or P. Ryan? Or are they going to say, hey, we got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we got Isaiah Pacheco, who may, by the way, Andy said he might get a few carries today against the Browns. That would be great to see ahead of the regular season. And they got Jerick McKinnon. So what if they go into this thing with 3 running backs, put Deneric Prince on the practice squad? Well, now maybe there's a spot open. It extends all the way over to the defensive side of the ball. I think they have a lot of talent here. Nico Remigio, does he go onto IR? Does he do the Justin Ross plan, right? Where they pop him onto IR to save him and protect him for a year and give him a red shirt year with the team because they like him, and maybe you don't have MVS next year, right? So that's a guy who's fighting it out. Justin Ross, they've kept him around for a reason. He's shown out. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't make the team. So I think you're looking at, let me try to count it out here. We did this on Thursday. MVS lock, Sky Moore lock, Rashee Rice lock, Kadarius Toney lock. There's 4. So now we got Justin Ross. Richie James has looked really good. That's 6. But then what about Watson? Does he make the team? Is he your 7th? Is there somebody I'm missing out? Is there somebody obvious I'm missing out on? I don't think so. With Remigio injured. So I think 7. I think Richie James, he feels like a lock, especially if he's going to be able to return on special teams. Who's the surprise player to make the roster? Danny Shelton, Ryan. Danny Shelton, he's looked good. There's some people in the Chiefs space that I really respect that think that he might be the best at his position on the team. So, kind of being like the chief nose tackle there. So Danny Shelton is the one that jumps out to me. Ryan, I don't think that's a need, right? So Ryan and Eric Prince, guys that could be on the practice squad. I don't see running back. As long as Clyde Edwards-Helaire is healthy, I don't see it being a massive need for the Chiefs, because I think when you're getting to that level of guy, they're just guys. They're nice players, but there's probably a bunch of players out there that they could pick up that can do what they do. So do you want to give up a roster spot for them when they're probably not going to be out there playing at all? And I think that's the trick, right? Raymond says Watson a lock for special teams. Yeah, I think he brings the special teams. It's going to come down to Dave Tobe as well. Justin Ross has been playing on special teams, so that's something to keep an eye out for as well. More questions about the game today. What are you looking forward to? What do you want to see out of the Chiefs? I've been beating this drum all preseason. I want to see Wanya Morris. I'm hoping he gets extended playing time today. 1, because I don't want the Chiefs to suffer any injuries along the starters on the offensive line. But number 2, I don't think this is a guy that's going to play really this year. So as a fan, as somebody who's invested in the talent on the roster, I'd really be interested to see a little bit more of him, because it might be my last chance until next season when, for all we know, he's going to be starting. By the way, if you're watching out there on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Let's get some more Chiefs fans in here as kickoff approaches. And I'm kind of interested to see this Browns team as well. They're kind of hyped up this season, right? I think a lot of people assume that Deshaun Watson is going to return to form. I don't know that I agree with that. I grew up in Northeast Ohio. I pull for the Browns when they're not playing the Chiefs, although they make it hard signing guys like Deshaun Watson. So I'm interested to get a look at this Browns team as well. They've got some interesting players at the wide receiver position. Are they going to be but my primary interest in them is, are they going to be a problem for the Cincinnati Bengals in the North? Matt Verderame and I talked about this on Thursday. You look at the AFC North. The Ravens have Lamar Jackson back. They're finally looking healthy. Always well coached, always in the mix. The Steelers with Mike Tomlin, always well coached, always in the mix. Even when they're not good, they're like sniffing around for that last playoff spot. So does Kenny Pickett take a step forward this year? If he does, I think they've got a strong offense, and their defense has been solid, so they could make some noise. And then you got the Browns. On paper, a really strong roster. What are they going to get from the quarterback position? And then we know what the Bengals are. So, Raymond, you lived in Cleveland during the Cardiac Kid days. That's when they would wear those orange sort of alternate orange and brown uniforms. I like those. Like with the orange pants. Those were cool. Gary says, go KC Chiefs. Indeed. Jesus Perez says, are you happy with offensive tackle Smith? Have you seen Orlando play? I haven't watched Orlando Brown in Cincy. Excuse me. What I read a lot of was that Cincinnati's offense might be a little bit of a better fit for Orlando Brown Jr., just because of the way that Joe Burrow kind of stays in the pocket, gets rid of the ball relatively quickly, whereas Mahomes can hold it a little bit sometimes, and he likes to move around back there to make some of those Mahomes magic plays. We'll see. We'll see as the season gets underway how that works out for Orlando Brown Jr. But, Verderame and I talked about this on Thursday. He left money on the table from the Chiefs. He wanted to test the market. He tested the market. He found out. F around, find out is what they say, right? So as far as Smith, yeah, Donovan Smith, so far in the preseason, I am very pleased and relieved, because People throw this around like he was solid in Tampa Bay, and they did win a Super Bowl with him. He was fine, but he was not well graded on Pro Football Focus. He had been getting better. I think Sterling Holmes has been making this point. Like he had been getting better each year, and then he had injuries last year. I think it was like an elbow injury, something about a thumb, and he was terrible. And he's been bad about false start and penalties. So like we're not really going to know that until we get into the season because he plays such a small sample size in the regular season. I'm worried about that because penalties, they're drive killers, right? Especially when they're unforced errors like that. So hopefully he can get on the same page with Patrick Mahomes and with the snap count, and we won't get a lot of those this year. Maybe he relaxes a little bit going from having a statue back there and Tom Brady to having somebody with the escapability and mobility of Patrick Mahomes. But he has looked good. He's looked strong. He moved a guy in that last game against the Cardinals just like 15 yards across the field, which was pretty impressive. So he's an imposing guy. So far, so good. I'm very worried because you just never know about preseason, right? I'm still very worried. But if he's at least as good as Orlando Brown Jr. was, if not a slight improvement for this offense, and Jawan Taylor is a step up over Andrew Wiley, which I think most people think he will be, this is probably, we talked about this on Thursday, it's maybe the best team that the Chiefs have put around Patrick Mahomes. Wide receivers, question mark, heading into the preseason. Now you're watching and you're like, all right, they're probably gonna be fine. We think they're gonna be fine. So Raymond Chandler says Donovan Smith is going to be a great under the radar pick by Veach. I mean, look, I do believe they were planning to put Jawan Taylor at left tackle. And then they decided to go after Donovan Smith. So after the draft, they tried to move up in the first round. I believe they tried to move up with the Cowboys. I think they offered a third, which is the pick that they used on Wanye Morris to move up with the Cowboys. Didn't work out. Cowboys took a player. Chiefs stood pat and drafted Felix. So, he wasn't the top of their list, but he was there. They knew he was there. And that, I think, is the mark of this front office right now, is patience. They're not Brett Veach likes to make some splash moves, and he'll go after people and be aggressive when it's necessary. But in that draft, like, they wanted to move up. They were trying to move up. They couldn't get a team to cooperate. If they wanted to be reckless with their picks, they could have gone up and gotten a guy. Like, all teams don't want to help the Chiefs, but they've all got a limit, right? Like, if you offer some stupid trade package, they're going to take it and let you move up. Brett Veach has been very restrained in his moves in the last couple of years. When we saw it with Tyreek Hill, we saw it with Orlando Brown Jr., we saw it in the draft. So he's obviously got a plan, and then he's got a backup plan, and he's got a backup plan for his backup plan. So, I think the Chiefs are in a good spot with Brett Veach. You hope that he doesn't get too conservative, but right now it's been working for this team. All right, fire off your questions. We're getting closer and closer to game time. What do you want to see from the Chiefs in this game? What do you want to know from me about my thoughts about this team? Who has a great game today to make the 53-man roster? That's from Raymond. That is a good question. Who's got to have a good game today to make the 53-man roster? Let me know what you guys think in the chat. Who's your player that is on the bubble, you think? For me, Matt Bushman. Does he get extended run today? Especially if they don't play the starters for a long time at that tight end position. With Jody Fortson injured, he's hung around. The Chiefs like him. Can he sneak in there with Blake Bell, with Noah Gray? He's one I'm really interested in. We haven't gotten to see a lot of. I think he's the one that I think of that is trying to sneak on there. Carter Kellogg, what position do they target with a midseason trade? That's interesting because obviously they did that last year, right, with Kadarius Toney, and things were going well Like the receivers were fine, and he was available. And Brett Veach was like, let me see if I can sneak in and get a wide receiver 1 for a bargain. And they're so maybe defensive tackle is something that they, it depends on who's available too, right? You've got to have a position in need, and there's got to be a suitable candidate available at the trade deadline that you want to go after. You don't want to make a move just to make a move. I think the Chiefs are young. I think they're pretty deep at most positions. But the injuries happen. That's another thing that could pop up. Like, what if? So we know that Charles Omenihu is going to be suspended for 6 games, which takes you close to the trade deadline. Well, what if? So maybe they didn't want to play FAU a ton, but now because of the suspension, they're going to have to. Maybe they're looking at him and they're like, look, like he's just got a ways to go. Like maybe he's not on the level that George Karlaftis was, or he's not developing fast enough. Omenihu's coming back. They like him, but they don't know. They'd like a little bit more depth there. Is that a time where they go and try to get somebody? Edge is not an easy position to come by, but sometimes teams are tanking and they're looking at the trade deadline as an opportunity to acquire more assets, right? Like the Giants, they were done with Kadarius Toney, so they moved him. So there's all kinds of interesting situations that could pop up. Our guy Stacy says Edge would be a nice trade deadline move. Yeah, if you can find the right person, for sure. Woojai 9 says Prince or P Ryan battle for the RB4 today. Potentially. I would say watch and see if either of them are on special teams, because that would be, especially if the Chiefs think they're going to keep 7 wide receivers. Do you have room for 4 running backs? It might be difficult for both of those guys if that's going to be the case. Chris Albright says, I would give Sue a call and see if he wants to play again. Yeah. I mean, they could do that. The other thing to think about is Tuesday, these NFL teams have to cut their rosters down to 53. And it may not even take until Tuesday, because sometimes what teams do, if they've got veteran guys that they respect really well, that they know aren't going to make the team, they'll go ahead and cut them loose early, so they have a chance to catch on somewhere else, right? So like Watson's a guy that if the Chiefs didn't, I think they have a lot of respect for. If they decided, okay, we're not going to keep this guy, but we like him, he's got good experience, he plays special teams, we know that he'll be able to catch on somewhere. Maybe he gets cut tonight, tomorrow, and before and like a first wave of cuts. Other teams are going to engage in those types of activities too. So if you're the Chiefs, pretty much like once these games are over, it's like the last wave of free agency. You got to start looking at your roster, making your evaluations. They probably already have a pretty good idea, and then they've got to be out there keeping an eye on like who's getting cut, who's getting let go, who's going to become a free agent, who might we want to go after. So it's a fascinating week. It's a hard weekend and early week for people in the NFL, because some of these guys are never going to play football again professionally. Like this is it. This is their shot. They're going to get cut, and that's it. So it's rough, but it's part of the business. And it's why, when we're watching the NFL, we're watching the best of the best. Let's see what else we got. Just a guy says, I'm glad Pat is not playing, although it lessens my excitement. Is that reported? Is Mahomes not playing today? I haven't seen that. Let me know in the chat. I'm going to look it up right now. That would be fantastic. I would be thrilled if Mahomes doesn't even step on the an hour ago. Here's the most action. This is from James Palmer. Here's the most action we'll see from Patrick Mahomes today. No Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Nick Bolton, or MVS today for the Chiefs, I'm told. That's fantastic. Adam Teicher reported Chiefs receivers are out on the field, all but Kelce. 3 of their quarterbacks are throwing to them, but not Mahomes. Looks like those guys are getting the day off and certainly won't be the only ones. That's great news. I know it lessens your excitement, but this is like if there's a true backup quarterback battle, and I know maybe a lot of us just don't care. Like, who cares? It's the backup quarterback. We don't ever want to see him play, but it is important. It has been important. Carter says Bouchel getting first snaps. It looks like that's great. I want to see if they're going to have like some of the starting offensive line out there, some of those things with some of the starting receivers or guys that will be out there. MVS, obviously veteran, getting the veteran by here. That's what you want to see. You want to see a guy like Shane Bouchel and Blaine Gabbert play with those guys, because if they get called into action, like Matt Moore got called into action, like Chad Henne got called into action in pivotal moments for the Chiefs, I want to know what those guys have and what they can do. And again, I know it's preseason, but it's important. It's important. The Chiefs might not have their Super Bowl if Chad Henne wasn't able to take care of things, if Matt Moore wasn't able to come in and make a play or two against the Cleveland Browns. So it's very important. All right, we're 5 minutes away. I can take one more question if somebody's got one before we get, because we got to get you ready for kickoff. By the way, if you are just tuning in for the first time, we do 1 million podcasts a week. We're on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. We have pregame shows, halftime shows, postgame shows. It's not just me. So make sure you are subscribed to the Arrowhead Addict YouTube channel. If you are an audio listener during the week, you can get us on Apple Podcasts, all of those places. And if you want to leave us a 5-star review, head on over to Apple Podcasts and do that. We'd really appreciate it. And we will read, just like we read Clint's, we'll read your review on the show. Raymond says Henne should get a Chiefs backup Ring of Honor. I mean, dude showed up. Dude showed up for us. All right, everybody. Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. Kickoff's in just a few minutes. So again, make sure you head back here for halftime. We'll be here for about 10 minutes at the half to break down what we saw in the first half, give you any injury updates that we're seeing, and then we'll be back after the game for around 45 minutes to an hour to break down everything, maybe do some roster predictions, all that. So, and as Raymond Chandler says, if you're not an AA member, join us in the Discord. Yeah, that's where I'll be hanging out with all of our members, chatting and watching the game. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining the Arrowhead Addict Chiefs pregame show. For producer Richard, my name is Patrick Allen. We'll see you at halftime. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.